So the 6v6 devlog was released today and it had a lot of really interesting points that I'm sure a million people have already addressed in detail. But there's something in the devlog that people aren't really talking about, which personally I found the most interesting and also pretty depressing. I also think it is the reason why we're stuck in this absolutely shitty state of the game right now. Now, the things I'm going to say are not confirmed facts, but I think there is a very high likelihood that this is the scenario that happened. First of all, let's get it out of the way. They did say that 6v6 will be coming back, at least to test it out in a few months, but it still begs the question, why ignore this topic for over a year? Aaron Killer cited performance issues as a reason why it was going to be hard to return to 6v6, or why they can't do 6v6 tests as soon as they want. While this may seem somewhat irrelevant, like oh it makes sense, 2 more players, it's obviously going to be more FPS intensive, you're not really thinking deeply enough about it. Because when Overwatch 2 first launched, I did notice, my FPS is a bit lower, and this is because Overwatch 2 is running on a different engine. They had to make a new engine for Overwatch 2. Now you may be looking at Overwatch 1 compared to Overwatch 2 and thinking, why do they have to make a new engine? The graphics aren't much different, and the answer is the PvE. The new engine was made with the PvE in mind. The PvE that no longer exists and will never exist. They had to redo the entire engine for the non-existent PvE. Now here's the theory I have. So they're working on the PvE, they had a deadline to hit, and they were getting the work scrapped over and over again. The working conditions were awful at Blizzard, okay? We know this, we've known about this for a while. The production of Overwatch 2 was an absolute disaster. And what this probably resulted in is a non-optimized engine. But they had to use it anyways because they needed it for PvE and they didn't have time to redo all of it. So they were working on PvE with this less than ideal engine, trying to make it work, and when they're testing the core game mode, they're realizing our FPS is lower. We're having performance issues. Why is this? It must be the new engine. Now I'm sure they tried a bunch of stuff to fix this, but with the deadlines they were on and the shitty development, I bet what happened is that the most efficient solution was having less players in the lobby. Because with less players in the lobby, the performance is much better. When you have 6 players in the lobby, and this is shown in the 6v6 workshop code that I've been playing recently, there are performance problems. The game is stuttery, it is laggy, and I think this is what happened. They saw that playing with 5 people in a team was way more performant than 6 players. And we're like, the tank role has been problematic for a long time. What would happen if we removed a tank? Wait a minute, that would solve queue times. That would make tank a lot more fun too, because the reason tank isn't fun in Overwatch 1 is because you get hit with all the CC and then you just evaporate. But with one tank we can make it stronger. So tank would die less and it would have more impact on the game, and so double shield would be gone and DPS wouldn't have to shoot tanks as much, so DPS are going to have more impact, and since the supports don't have to heal the tank as much, supports also get more playmaking potential and alternate options for how to play their kits. Oh my god, we have just accidentally solved all of the problems with Overwatch 1 in this. So they implemented it and they tested it and they liked the results. Everything looked good because on paper, the reasons they switched to 5v5 make sense. On paper, everything seems good. Now that we've actually played the game and seen how it's evolved over the last year, we see that these things that they promised at the beginning are not true. Like individual agency and tanks being more fun, these are not true, and it's actually the exact opposite. But I can absolutely see why the devs would think this would work. And so that's what happened. I had been wondering for the last 11 seasons of Overwatch 2, what happened? Why are they not talking about this? Why aren't they trying to go back when the game was so much better and everyone is saying it? And it's because they couldn't. They were unable to go back to 6v6. They were stuck in this format because of the cancelled PvE that they made this new engine for. They physically, if they wanted to, could not go back to 6v6 without jeopardizing the lower end machines. And so as they realized that 5v5 wasn't working, what were they supposed to do? Completely backtrack and rework their engine from the ground up for months just to revert to what we had years ago? What an absolute PR nightmare that would have been. And so they didn't. They tried to fix it. They tried everything in their power to make 5v5 work. Desperate for seasons and seasons, making drastic changes to tank, to hitboxes, to health pools, to the entire game, and nothing worked. The entire game basically had to get reworked from the ground up, and it ruined so many things. It just turned into a sunk cost fallacy where they decided to stick to this format instead of backtracking because they had already put so much time into it and they didn't want to have to rewrite the whole engine. It makes so much sense now why they stuck with 5v5 despite everyone saying how 6v6 was better. I honestly feel so bad for the developers in this scenario. because it honestly wasn't even their faults this time. It was forced on them by terrible management, and now they have to pick up the pieces. Now, I've called out the devs many times and called them incompetent, but who can really blame them? Who can balance this format? It's just an absolute disaster and completely out of their control. I'd like you to find me one person who could balance 5v5, solo tanking, and role queue. I don't think anyone could do it. I think it's just impossible. So I don't even blame the devs. I wouldn't be surprised if deep down they knew this the whole time, but just refused to act on it, because what could they do? It's just such an unfortunate circumstance. However, I'm extremely glad that Aaron Keller came out with a blog like this to at least give people some news. Finally, they have said it, and they're working on optimizing their engine to return to 6v6. I think this was absolutely the right decision, and in a few months we're going to get a 6v6 playtest. I truly believe that if they properly balance the mode, it will absolutely come back as a mainstay, and there truly is hope for the game. After reading the blog, I really just feel bad for them. They just wanted 5v5 to work so badly, and it just didn't. This switch to 6v6 and re-optimizing the engine is just going to be so much extra work for them. And it really shows that they have the players' best interests at heart. For the first time in years, I'm excited for the future of Overwatch.